Remember when every street in Britain had a Cortina or a Chevette parked along the curb? They rattled, steamed up, and smelled like oil, crisps, and whoever drove them last. But they got us where we needed to go, eventually. You didn't just ride in these cars, you grew up in them, squabbling in the back seat, learning to change gear, singing along to the radio with the windows fogged up. In this video, we're looking back at 5 iconic British cars that once ruled the roads and quietly disappeared. If any of them take you back, give the video a like and let's hit the road. Ford Cortina, the family car that felt like a promotion. In the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, nothing said, "We've made it," quite like a Cortina parked on the drive. Not flash, but sharp enough to feel like a step up in the world. It had that no-nonsense, square-jawed look, vinyl seats that hissed in summer, a glove box that rattled just enough to be familiar. If the windscreen steamed up, you wiped it with your sleeve and cracked the window. Job done. Everyone knew someone who had one. Your dad, your mate's dad, that one neighbor who washed his every Sunday morning in slippers. There were versions for everyone. The 1.3-liter for getting about, the 2.0 gear for showing off, and the Lotus Cortina for the few who fancied themselves racers on the ring road. And the trim? Fake wood, fuzzy mats, maybe even a heated rear window if you were posh. It wasn't about top speed. It was about looking like you were going places. You could stuff a tent and 3 kids in the back and still make it to Skegness without a fuss. Well, usually. The Cortina was part of the landscape, parked outside red brick semis, filling pub car parks on Sunday afternoons, lining the roads of new-build estates, still smelling of fresh tarmac. And the inside, a world of boiled sweets, loose maps, cassette tapes, and that one rogue biro no one ever moved. By the time the Sierra took over in the mid-80s, something was lost. Yes, it looked like the future, but the Cortina felt like Britain. And now, when you see one at a car show, it's not just nostalgia, it's recognition of foggy mornings, clunky indicators, and a time when you still wound down the window by hand and didn't mind a bit. Austin Allegro, the car we mocked but secretly relied on. It was the butt of every joke. Even back then, people called it a jelly mold on wheels. But the Austin Allegro was everywhere. And if you didn't own one, someone on your street definitely did. It came in shades like mustard, beige, and that strange British Leyland green that only existed in the 70s. The doors never shut quite right, the choke was temperamental, and the square steering wheel, the Quartic, was the weirdest thing you'd ever seen as a kid. But it started. It moved. It got you to the shops and back, usually, and for many families that was more than enough. It was the car your mum used to do the school run, the one your gran drove to the market on Thursdays, the one you sat in outside the chippy, legs sticking to the seat as Radio 2 hummed through the static. It creaked, it rattled, it never let you forget it was there. But it also taught you how to drive, how to reverse round a corner, and how to work the heater by thumping the dashboard. You saw Allegros in laybys with the bonnet up, on the ferry to France, bravely packed with luggage and hope, in the works car park next to Cortinas, looking slightly embarrassed, but holding its own. And despite all the grief it got, the Allegro sold in huge numbers, because for all its flaws, it was affordable, British-built, and, in its own stubborn way, charming. It wasn't a car you boasted about, but you remembered it. The gear crunch, the soggy footwell, the little badge on the boot that made it yours. Today, it's mostly remembered with a wink and a wince. But deep down, we all know, it was never as bad as people said. It just got on with it, like the rest of us. Vauxhall Chevette, the hatchback that quietly did everything. Before small cars became cool, there was the Vauxhall Chevette, Not glamorous, not powerful, but everywhere. It had that sloped bonnet like it was leaning into the wind, even when it barely made 50 on the dual carriageway. Inside, the bare essentials: a heater that worked if you hit it, a tape deck that chewed up your ABBA cassette, and a gear stick that wobbled like it had stage fright. It was the car you borrowed from your older brother to learn clutch control, the one you took to the coast with your mates. Roof rack squeaking, crisps on the back seat, and the smell of warm vinyl and Lynx Africa in the air. It wasn't built to impress. It was built to survive. And it did. Across towns, B roads, housing estates and supermarket car parks from Croydon to Carlisle. You could fix most things with a bit of string and a hammer, and if it broke down, you just pushed it to the side and got on with your day. There were 3-door and 5-door models, estate versions for dog owners, and the HSR rally car for those who fancied themselves on gravel but mostly drove to quick save. It was cheap to insure, easy to park, and came in colors like burnt orange, moss green, and probably white under the rust. Parents trusted it, teenagers abused it, mechanics rolled their eyes but kept it going with spit and spanners, and it never asked much in return. Today, it might seem basic, but back then, it was freedom on 4 wheels. And for many, the Chevette was the first car that truly felt like theirs. Hillman Imp, the wee motor with a big personality. It was never the obvious choice. But if you grew up in certain parts of the UK, especially Scotland, the Hillman Imp wasn't just a car. It was a badge of pride. Built in Linwood, Renfrewshire, the Imp was Britain's answer to the Mini, but with a twist: rear engine, rear-wheel drive, and a boot where you thought the engine should be. You opened the bonnet and found space for a bag of shopping. Opened the back, and there was the engine, ticking like a sewing machine. It overheated if you looked at it funny, and the electrics were moody at best. But it had light steering, a lively gearbox, and a bit of zip that made even short trips feel like a proper drive. It was the kind of car your cool older cousin had, with a furry dice, a pair of shades on the dash, and T-Rex playing on the crackly radio. You saw it flying down country roads, back end twitching, driver grinning like they knew something the rest of us didn't. If you owned one, you probably kept a toolkit in the boot and a roll of kitchen towel under the seat, just in case. You knew how to nurse it. You knew how to listen to it. The Imp didn't try to impress Southerners in big saloons. It was for the rest of us, who didn't mind the odd puddle under the engine as long as it got us to the corner shop and back. And while it never topped the sales charts, it won hearts, quietly, proudly, and with a little grit. It was small, scrappy, and full of character, just like the towns it came from. Even now at car meets and classic shows, you'll find a few old Imps, bonnet up, chrome gleaming, stories being swapped, because no one forgets their first proper drive, especially if it rattled. Rover SD1, the executive dream that couldn't quite deliver. If you wanted to look like management in the late 70s, you got yourself a Rover SD1, long, low-slung and styled like a Ferrari Daytona after a cup of tea. It was bold, modern, and unapologetically British. Under the bonnet, a throaty V8 that made motorway overtakes feel effortless. Inside, wide seats, deep carpets, and a dashboard that looked like it belonged on Concorde. Even the speedometer seemed to stretch across the windscreen, as if to say, "You're going places." Police forces loved them, fleet managers bought them, and if your dad came home in one, you sat in the passenger seat like royalty, elbow on the door, dreaming of leather trim. But for all its flair, the SD1 was a bit British Leyland. Inconsistent build quality, dodgy electrics, doors that didn't quite line up. It was as if the designers finished their masterpiece, then handed it to the Friday afternoon shift. Still, it had presence. You felt something when it pulled up outside a pub or idled at the lights, a mix of authority and please don't stall. The SD1 was a dream of catching up with the Germans, of making Britain proud again on the roads. But even when bits fell off, it felt ambitious, which in the late 70s was rare in itself. You remember the hum of the engine as it cruised the M6, the soft glow of the dash at night, the smell of the carpets in summer, part dust, part polish, part warm plastic. And yes, it left oil on the driveway. Yes, it didn't always start. But when it worked, really worked, it made you feel like the future wasn't so far off after all.